and welcome back. In today's video, we're going to talk about the 6 things you need to become a licensed daycare. Licensing can seem like a complicated process, but these 6 things will help you get a good start on your licensing approval journey by a licensing board in your state. 1. Caregiver qualifications. There are no extreme qualifiers for being a provider, but there are necessary considerations to follow by state. These qualifications will differ depending on the type of care provided. For example, a single caregiver will have fewer qualifications than a group family child care provider. For a single caregiver, there are only 2 qualifications. 1 must be an adult, and 2 must be physically capable of caring for children. For a group family child care provider, the required qualifications are different. Due to the number of children and the skills necessary to coordinate them, the qualifications call for more experience and education. According to childcare.gov, the group family care provider must have some or all of the following. First, at least 1 year of experience as a family child care provider. 2, at least 6 months of experience as a licensed family child care provider with additional training by state. And third, certifications or licenses in specific areas like child development or a degree in K-6 teaching, etc. These qualifications may differ from state to state and call on different degrees of experience and education. What is not in question for all states is the required background checks of all daycare providers. 2. Physical environment. In this video, we'll discuss 2 aspects of the requirements for the physical environment of your daycare: indoor-outdoor requirements and health and safety codes. When you're thinking about the physical aspects of your facility, you want to consider both indoor and outdoor and how you plan on making sure health and safety codes are maintained for the children you will care for. Each state might have differences in their requirements per their laws and regulations. For Minnesota, there needs to be a minimum of 35 square feet of usable indoor space and 50 square feet of outdoor space per child. Also, the state of Minnesota calls for a park or playground to give children a place to regularly be outside, 1,500 feet from the daycare. In California, as in Minnesota, there need to be a minimum of 35 square feet of indoor space. California, apart from Minnesota, requires at least 75 square feet per child of outdoor play space, and family daycare homes do not require the square footage. These 2 are examples of the nuanced differences between states, and it is important to check your state's physical environment requirements when considering becoming a licensed daycare provider. 3. Number of children per provider. After taking care of caregiver qualifications and environmental requirements, the next question we must answer for licensing your daycare is, how many people do I need on staff per child? The best answer is to never hire more staff than you need. Some states might have differences in their requirements based on age range and ratios. If you were to open a daycare in New York, United States, for example, caring for children between the ages of 6 weeks and 9 months, the best ratio per caregiver would be 1:4, with a maximum group size of 8 per caregiver. If the age ranged between 10 and 12 years, the best ratio would be 1:15, with a maximum of 30 children per caregiver. It will be important, as stated earlier, to hire as needed based on these ratios. The ratios provided are examples of New York's requirements, but each state, as suggested across this article, will differ, and always research what your state needs from you as a daycare provider to meet the appropriate requirements to become a licensed daycare provider. 4. Behavior guidance. After you note the number of children you will be caring for and the right amount of staffing you need to effectively meet licensing standards, you must understand the behavioral standards set by the state. For example, In Minnesota, corporal punishment, including spanking, humiliation, mental abuse, or punitive interference with daily living functions such as eating, sleeping, or toileting, is prohibited. Caregivers are asked to help the child acquire a positive self-image, self-control, and teach socially acceptable behavior. There is also a requirement on the time-limited separation of a child from a group, which is indicated appropriately by the age of the child and the circumstances. 5. Policy and records. The information must be accessible by parents and the licensing agency. It is critical to record everything you are doing for organizing and legitimizing your daycare into a licensed one. Sometimes policies and records can become outdated or disregarded. Don't let this happen. To mitigate problems from happening early on, think about all the questions you will need to answer for parents and a licensing agency. To get you started, here is a strong list of questions your daycare will need to answer and record. What are the ages and how many children are in your care? What hours of the day and what days will your daycare run? What are your policies for when a child is ill? Is there a pet policy? What is the insurance coverage going to be? Once you have answered these questions and others that may have popped up, make sure to train your staff on the policies to ensure they are kept up to date. There is nothing worse than having confused staff about procedures when they run into obstacles or emergencies, especially regarding the safety of the children. The National Database for Child Care is a great resource and has an interactive state-by-state website with direct links to each state's licensing policies. This resource will give you some best practices for securing your policies. 6. Activities and equipment. Finally, your daycare may be required to give examples of activities you plan on practicing and playing with the children. You may also need to have a certain amount of equipment based on the number of children cared for. If you do not have an appropriate amount of equipment for all the children you will be supervising as a daycare, it may hurt your ability to get licensure approval. Overall, you want to identify your state laws and regulations around licensing a daycare, identify staff who will meet the required state qualifications and background checks, find a site that will not jeopardize the safety of the children you care for and delivers the required amount of space for both indoor and outdoor activities. Purchase equipment, record policies, agreements, and day-to-day activities. Some states will require an orientation, which is scheduled by the licensing agency of the state you are applying in. For example, in the state of California, they ask daycare providers to attend an orientation set by the licensing agency before they can be considered for licensing. Once again, make sure you check your specific state's licensing requirements. There you have it. If you make sure to consider these 6 things as you work to get your daycare licensed, you're guaranteed to have a successful daycare business running in no time. To learn more about how to start your own daycare, check out our free Quick Start Guide for starting a daycare at daycarebusinessboss.com or click the link below. Thank you for watching, and for more daycare business tips, like and subscribe.